And 10.
Witten, happy Friday, my friend. Happy Friday to everyone out there.
Friday. Good to see you, mate. Good to see you. I just thought you might need to link a few of those channels if we haven't, while we got carried away laughing at our own jokes before we got live.
That's true, but they were funny.
They were good. Awesome. Hey, welcome, folks. Can see a couple of you guys jumping on now. Welcome to another Wealth Coffee Chat. It's actually Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. I'm in autopilot. I missed the Wealth Coffee Chats this morning. Hardik, mate, how are you? Good to see you, buddy. A few of you guys in there. Got a cheeky one. Hey, check this one out. Andy, I saw this. Can you see it? I saw this in the shop this afternoon. And,
wow.
It's a Snoop Dogg wine.
Snoop Dogg wine.
Yeah.
Holy smoke.
It's called 19 Crimes. Well, you know, I just like the picture. I didn't necessarily think the wine would be any good, but there you go.
Wow.
There we go. Oh, hello. So good to see you, mate. And Jeff's in town as well. Wait. Hey, oh no, Jeff. Jeff was going to head off for a surfing trip, Andy, and he's grounded.
Oh, no.
Tragedy, Jeff. Tragedy. Well, as a very average consolation prize, mate, you can hang out with us and have a wine this afternoon. But that certainly would be like rubbing salt in the wound, I'm quite sure, mate.
Oh, jeepers creepers. Poor Jeff. Mate.
Yeah, it is. Hey, Chriso, it is. It's called Cali Red. You're dead right, mate.
Does it come with its own set of papers as well?
Bob said he's got weeded. Well, maybe it does. Maybe I'll be bloody on the floor before we know it. Let's keep an eye on me, Andy. There you go. Well, it tastes all right. But to be honest, folks, you don't want to get wine recommendations from me. Fenton's a lot more sophisticated when it comes to the quality of drinking as in comparison to me. So, but anyway, I do like having a wine with Andy and hanging out with you guys on a Friday. So welcome to another catch-up. Jeff, mate, commiserations out there to you, bro. Mate, yeah. I know you were looking forward to that holiday. It was a bit of a bummer, mate, But anyway, mate, what are we doing today? We're going to maybe, folks, we're going to have a quick precursor to a catch-up that that Andy and I have been talking about with the budget. We might sort of do a little bit of a precursor on the budget. You guys know the drill. Anyone who's new, give us a shout out in the chat. That'd be great to hear from you if you're new. But for most of you, you know this. We've been hanging out doing this since COVID graced itself upon our shores, and Andy and I have been trying to help our respective communities make sense of all this stuff. And we realised there's lots to make sense of, and not only just around COVID, but in property and business and finance in general. So welcome to the weekly debrief. Andy and I think after a wine on a Friday is not a bad time to sort of analyse the week that's gone and maybe look to the week that's coming and make some analysis of things we might need to do, avoid, or whatever it might be in the world of business, the world of property. That's what these, Wealth, Wine and Wisdom afternoons is all about, folks. So great to see all of you guys here. And as it says on the screen, Andy and Jason hanging out with you guys. But there's usually a little bit of a process, Andy, we go through in each of the weeks.
Informal.
Yep. Some things are what's in the news. We do a little bit of that. What's in the news right now, mate? Budget. It's all a bit of talk. We might talk about that, team. We certainly want to hear from you guys. If you got any questions, if you do have any questions, load them up in the chat. It's always good for us to get a little bit of something to talk about. And I don't think that's actually quite hard. Andy and I could talk underwater, to be honest.
Well, I'd love to say that there's usually budget time's a pretty happy time for me, and I look forward to sinking my teeth into it. But it's a bit mundane this time. But we'll still run through it,
wasn't it? Yeah. We'll do a high level quick chat about it. And maybe, folks, maybe we'll have one or two things you should know. As Andy and I drink more wine, we come up with some, what we think are pearls of wisdom. And sometimes Andy thinks it's the wine talking. So there you go. So you never.
Pearls of wisdom or rocks of stupid. Sometimes we never quite know, but we'll see where we go today. But Hardwick's off the ranks already with the questions, and guys, it really is. It's a great chance to fire some questions at it. It gives us a good chance to understand where you're at, so that we can talk to the things that are on your mind. Of course, we love to wax lyrical and talk about the things that we find interesting. But as we said, there wasn't too much interesting as far as the budget was concerned. But we've got some special stuff to kind of lay down for you.
Indeed. It was a bit vanilla, Andy. It was a bit vanilla, bit safe, but Zara Gold by name and Gold by nature. Mate, good to see you. Hopefully you're awesome, buddy. And then we've got a few other questions here. How long before they decide a course of action? Yeah, well, there you go. Ditching stamp duty anytime soon. There's noises, Alison. We might touch on that a bit later on. I think the states are a bit addicted to that drug, unfortunately. But we'll see. We shall see. And Jeff's got a couple here just to touch base on. So, Andy, mate, I thought what we might do is I might go through this little thing just quickly with everyone, and we'll just do a quick.
Just before you do, mate, I'll do a little bit of an intro into the federal budget.
Do it.
I've got a little question for everybody out there. Whack it into the chat and it should be what do or what does. No, it should be what does. So whack it into the chat if you know the answer to this. What does Top Gun and the federal budget, what do they have in common? So I'd love to hear from you.
What does Top Gun,
as in Tom Cruise, Top Gun, and what are the federal budgets? What do they have in common? I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this. I'm sure it's going to come up on a trivia night sometime soon at a bar near you.
There's a prize.
Boring. Bob. Oh, my God. Shut up. Unbelievable.
Top Gun's one of the best movies ever, Bob. I don't know if we can be friends anymore.
Unbelievable. I think they're both partners with a goose. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, full of risk.
I read that as full of shit then, not full of risk. Well, I love that. Yeah, you guys are on fire today. But here's the real deal: is that their ego is writing checks that their body can't cash. And there's not been a truer statement about budgets. And really, I think that one of the more disturbing things about politics these days is, and I heard this bandied around a little bit, Jace, before we get into it, is that Labor was sort of thinking, well, we'll just throw more money at it. Liberal are going, well, we'll just throw more money at it. And at any point in time, do any of these Muppets actually turn around and go, well, hang on, this isn't a popularity contest, although it is. And I'm pretty sure that most of these guys fell fairly short of being a prefect or, class captain back at the school days. I'd love to see the shots. You can just imagine it, can't you? You've got ScoMo. He's the one who's got his finger up his nose like that in every photo up to year 11.
He's not in first rugby or something, that's for sure.
It is. It's a little bit concerning to look at the way these people approach budgets, because we'll go through it on your side, Jace. But as we go through it, you're going to see how little substance there is to it, and I'm going to talk to a number of things as we run through it. But I kind of go and what I'd love you guys to be pontificating as we go through this is, what is ultimately for the good of the country, especially post COVID times. And I think you're going to be wanting a little bit for the answers on that as we go through it. So, Jace, let's have a crack at the ABC.
Yeah, well, listen, Bob, WA banked an $8 billion surplus. Hey, an $8 billion surplus, Andy. But that doesn't mean that the federal budget or the federal deficit is helped in any way. So it's an interesting thing when we talk about this stuff. But
I think you need a passport to get over to WA these days, don't you?
Yeah, they've always wanted to be their own country, has WA. So, mate, let's see how they roll with that one. Yeah, listen, folks. as we look at, the winners and the losers. This is a quick snapshot from the ABC, which is not bad. Winner, hey, I don't know if that's a winner, to be honest, but fuel prices are up, and the government's saying, hey, let's help out people with petrol prices. And then loser, sustainable energy. I'm not quite sure, that's the way to roll, but here's what they're saying. Winners, motorists are going to get some sort of, compensation for the cost of fuel, Andy.
Yep. Yeah. Look, this is masturbation, really. This is just a little bit of short-term relief. It really is. It's just and probably needed, right? But it's not a budgetary measure. Like, no. They've thrown this in. I think that this is something that they would have pulled out of their handbag if they were losing a few votes at the point in time, or wallet, whichever. I just couldn't figure out the word there. I'm not trying to be contentious there, but the short-term impacts are going to be quite significant, and being able to ease a little bit of that pain for what I believe will be a reasonably short period of time. We've already seen that the US is switching on the pumps. I had a chat with Malcolm Palmer during the week in one of our investment updates, which, Jace, I think you did a flyby on with the Top Gun theme.
It was very interesting. Yeah.
Jason busted the tower during one of our investment chats, and so they paid into Europe. They were paying $200 million per oil tanker, $200 million, where 3 weeks earlier they paid 20.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That doesn't sustain. And this is not long after. It wasn't that long ago where the oil companies were actually paying people to take oil away.
Yeah,
they were literally, because they had oversupplied, and they were literally paying. Oil prices were negative meaning that the oil companies were literally paying people to take tankers of oil away, because they can't just switch off the tap. And so here's the thing: this is going to create a lot of volatility in the markets. My tip is, and please do not put money behind it, because it's a tip, and there's many things that can aggravate this. But they'll switch the taps back on. It'll lead to an oversupply, undersupply. Then that'll slowly work its way through. But in the short term, it's going to make a lot of difference to a number of people out there who it hurts the pocket. It really does.
Well, I mean, Andy, it is a short-term budget, and it's one to get them voted back in, right? This is the concept. Let's get back in power. Let's not do anything racy. We're not going to deal with the long-term consequences of, budget deficits or take on anything big. This is kind of pretty vanilla. It's a vote winner. It's a kind of steady as she goes. Let's not rock the boat, right? So
yeah, it was good timing. It was just a good timing kind of position for them. I love what Chriso had to say. A couple of people lost pretty big on margins when oil went negative, 100%. People are on the wrong side of those futures trades, Chriso.
Got Polax, huh? Got Polax.
Mate, they were absolutely smashed to smithereens.
So, mate, there's not much in here. Like you said, she's a bit dry in the budget, and there's not a lot in here other than it's short term. It might be, a small benefit one way or another. Couple of things, regionals getting some investment. That's always trying to win votes again. They tend not to follow through on that, which is actually sad. I think regional Australia is severely underinvested in. We've got some great infrastructure there, and the government for decades have been letting it wane. I think they should do better. Plenty of things in here. One thing, in our neck of the woods.
What I love, mate, is that correlation. If you just go up a little bit, and I'm probably going to be unpopular with a few people, including my parents, on this one, but no, I'm just joking. Is the pensioners? I'll be a bit upset, but the welfare recipients. My God, when are we going to stop buying DVD players for people? For God's sake, really? An extra $250 per person, and look. I know it's tough out there, but let's put this into context. Lowest unemployment in history, and at a 4% rate, I've forgotten what they call it, Jace, but there's an economist, there's a behavioral economics theory that basically says that it doesn't get below 4%. And the reason why it doesn't is because 4% of the population don't want to work and will not work under any stretch of any imagination. You will not get them out to work. Either can't or don't want to work. So that we're about as low as we possibly go. So then they think, well, we'll just throw an extra 250 per eligible recipient. Now, mate, this is after COVID, right, where people had no time to go out and spend any money because, especially down here, we were locked up for 2 years, and they got 2 lots of 750. So that's 1,500 twice throughout that period where they can't go out and spend any more money, where we weren't in inflationary periods of time, and mate, it's just an absolute money grab. That's all it is. How does it make Australia a better place?
Well, it doesn't, and it's a band-aid. You know that. Like it's not putting it where long-term wages grow. And let's face it, mate, and folks listening in, the country has been waning for a decade. Long-term wages have been static, or if not declining, in comparison to the cost of goods, the cost of life, whatever it is. The government has not put enough effort into wage growth and job growth in Australia. They've been off with the fairies, and we're seeing now the detrimental effect. Like, I'm a property guy, Andy. I love real estate. The market actually ends up in a negative place when the government chucks free money at the market. Like, any time there's free money given to anything, either an individual or a marketplace or whatever, it augments and makes that marketplace unhealthy. Call it zombie businesses, call it people who buying homes that shouldn't be buying homes. Like, it breaks the regular market machinations, and then we end up with problems. E.g., right now, there was no way, even with 5 years planning, that the Australian property market could have got ready to have a housing boom the size we just saw, right? Like, as in construction boom. And not only that, the biggest public infrastructure projects we've ever seen in Australia's history, Melbourne, the largest one ever. Not only that, winning the Olympics and infrastructure, nobody thought this shit through. Like, the government was like, just chuck money at people. That'll keep them happy, and I think for me, that's how this first home buyer stuff, again, it's all about first home buyers getting into the marketplace. Fine. I understand supporting them and whatever. I think lending's actually broken too, but let's not get down that rabbit hole today.
Well, mate, but here's the contradictory argument to this. The government's incentivizing people who allegedly cannot afford to get into the property market when they believe that the property market is actually overheating and they want to cool it down.
Yeah.
So they've created a policy that allows people to get in at 5%. Now, if they believe that they're going to try and curb the property market to push it down, and they're going to try and do things to slow the market, then effectively what they're doing is they're allowing people to go bankrupt. Or they're incentivizing people to, and I'm not saying properties are going down, but I'm saying that there is definitely some rhetoric around housing prices, housing affordability, and they're trying to manipulate it and potentially drag it down. Now, to me, that's contrary policy. It's a tangled hierarchy.
It doesn't work, Andy. And the only way to Christo's saying, supply chains, like right now, the only way to fix the real estate space is to increase the supply to the marketplace. Now, we can aggregate supply if we, crack on, but, that's going to take 5 years to change. Like, the vision needs to be there. If they want to keep property prices low, then supply needs to be high, right? Brisbane, the Brisbane marketplace, didn't grow significantly for at least 8 years because the supply was high.
Yeah, Jason, we've got a big problem here. We've got a really big problem. I hear what you're saying, but mate, last time I went down to council, shared income, I reckon it took me 20 minutes just to see anybody. Everyone was at lunch. It was 11 o'clock. They came back. It was 2 o'clock. Everyone was pissed. I'm just joking. I never went in there. I wouldn't bother. Wouldn't waste my time. But they moved so slowly, Jace. But so if all of a sudden there's land approval, people in these council, they'll actually have to do some work. More subdivisions means more work. And mate, sorry, not in my watch. I'm happy sitting in my little shire doing very, very little and earning a lot. So, mate, don't bring that kind of sensibility around here. I'm not going to deal with it,
mate. So at the end of
I might have just lost a few friends there.
Well, and the councils, they're not measured by like normal businesses would be to be efficient and do some output and deliver on time. That is the challenge with and I see this juxtaposed position. I personally don't think things like public health should be privatized. I think certain things, education should not be privatized. I think it should be provided by our society in a way, somewhere like
Sweden.
Sweden, the Scandinavian countries, right? It's like, okay, everyone deserves to be educated. I'd be very happy to pay more tax if that was the process. But, for many of us, we're like, what the, you want to charge me these taxes and I want to put my kids in the public school and, I wouldn't bloody house my dog there because the thing's, not looked after or whatever. Like these are the things that sort of grinds people's gears. So, but yeah, government KPIs. Personally, I think, Andy, people like anyone who gets voted in for government, they should have 5 things they got to achieve and by when. You and I run our businesses like this. It's tops. If they don't,
5 rocks and the 5 tops.
Yeah, if they don't achieve them by the time frame, they're automatically removed from government. It's like, boom, you're out, mate. You said you were going to get this done, and you haven't got it done. Well, mate, you're out. Next bloke.
Can you imagine that? I never said that. What are you talking about? Here's a video of you saying that. Oh, I never said that. This is a video of you actually saying exactly that. Well, that's not what I meant. You can imagine it. Well, it's written down in clean. Yeah, it's but can you imagine it? But here's the danger, and mate, I reckon that at some point in time they'll realize that with the property side of the equation, and then there's going to be a supply. There'll be a big overrun of supply. They'll release too much too soon. But my big worry, and I've only really learnt this after hanging out with you, is my big worry is then if the right people aren't overseeing that development, you can have what ends up happening in South Bank in Melbourne, where you ended up with shoebox apartments by developers who made a lot of money, who devalued an area that is one of the prime bits of real estate in Melbourne. And my real worry about the mass land release is, and I was being tongue in cheek before and probably lost a few friends over it, but they'll hopefully come back. I was being a little bit cheeky. But the reality is, when that happens, they're not going to be ready for the kind of approvals that are going to need to push through. You know what I mean? Like the.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Queensland, the Brisbane LGA is actually a really good case study of this. Melbourne actually lost control of their planning instruments over a decade ago in the early 2000s. And they ended up with apartments and properties being built, mostly apartment space in Melbourne, that would be illegal in every other country in the world. They were actually building the worst. And Melbourne had a reputation of the shittest multi-density on the planet, basically. And it's because they had no function, overall management function of the density and the planning instruments. Just prior to the GFC, Melbourne said, gloves are off, team. We're taking control, and they did plan Melbourne. And for the last decade, Andy, their development controls have been amazing. So they've really tightened down. So there was a decade there. It was just out of control. And some of that stuff was just complete and utter rubbish. And that's why we avoided Melbourne for a long time in our world. when it came to medium density stuff, because it just wasn't. It was just rubbish. So yeah, it's interesting to see.
What do we say around here? We say history doesn't repeat itself, but it's often a good mimic. So we'll see what happens. I'll be keen to see how it. I've heard murmurs in Melbourne that there's a change as to who is regulating the approval space, whether it's going from local to more state based. I don't know the facts behind it, but we'll see. And I think it'll be an interesting way that they manage their way through it, because the problem is, as you rightly said, you could map out. And what I'd love to see in budgets, Jace, what I'd love to see is things like we have a 15-year property plan to see people get into property. Because, Jace, you don't save for a property in 1 year unless you've got a crazy good income. You don't save for a property. It's 4, 5, 6, sometimes, longer people will save to get into property. And you kind of think, well, wouldn't you go, okay, part of the budget, we're creating a roadmap, a 15-year roadmap to manage housing affordability for the next 50 years, 75 years, all of these sorts of things.
Mate, it's they make it more complicated than it needs to be. That's exactly what it is.
Because somebody else goes, hang on, how's about we just give $250 away to a lot of people each? Brilliant, Andy. Brilliant. Put a hold on the long-term property plan, gents. Somebody just dropped a bomb in here. Let's
Oh, Andy, high five for me on that one. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And really, at the end of the day, it's like, all right, when you break it down to, they don't ask anyone who actually really understands the industry. If there's a first home buyer, they earn $60,000, $70,000. They've got a good income. They want to move into a property. They can afford to pay the mortgage, right? So then create a process where the government is saying, all right, well, we'll underwrite. The scourge of the property world is the mortgage insurers, right? And like they are absolute hyenas, and they are absolutely the scavengers of what goes on out there. And I don't know how that actually occurred in the world. But lenders' mortgage insurance is a fucking farce. And, it's like they're just absolute ambulance chasers, those people. They add so much cost to a first home buyer getting into their property. You think about this right now. You think about a property, $500,000, and that's probably, a pipe dream in capital cities. But let's call it $500,000. A builder now or a developer there's 10% of GST on that anyway. That's a tax, right? There's stamp duty. There's going to be $10,000 to $15,000 on that. So let's call it, $50,000. Add another $15,000. We're into it for $65,000. LMI on top of that. That'd be another $15,000 for a first home buyer. And then you think about the tax that the companies who create those things would have to pay on top of that, right? And then now you've got to pay land tax. Well, not for PPR anyway, but you've got to pay rates and other taxes as well. Like, come on now, folks. If somebody's got a PPR, it should be stamp duty free. I think stamp duty's stamp duty was meant to be removed when GST come in, and that was a bloody absolute, fast move again. So this is the stuff where the governments are gutless and spineless when it comes to, if they want first home buyers to be able to own properties, it's like the guy can afford it, give him the property. Do 100% loan for a principal place of residence. They can afford it. And then there might be some government guarantee if they want to underwrite the banks. The government should underwrite the person's ability to own the property. There shouldn't be hyenas hanging around, picking the carcass clean, when the government's saying, oh, we want to help, but we won't, but we'll throw you to the LMI gods. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. So, yeah. They're good time Charlies, unfortunately.
That's interesting, Jace, because I never actually thought about it. So when they're saying the 5%, because I haven't looked into it too much because it's just not where we play, but that first home buyers scheme, does that mean that they don't pay LMI, or effectively they've funded the LMI?
They've funded the LMI. So,
Wow.
again,
wow.
Like, mate, it's like, well, hang on, the politicians have got shares in the LMI companies. It's a fucking farce, right? It's like, well, you know what the government should do? They should have their own LMI. Maybe here's what happens. Here's what happens. Your super should pay the LMI for you. Whatever. Like, there's so many different ways to do this. There should be an interest rate guarantee. It's just like, you as an owner, a first home buyer, should have, whatever the cash rate is plus 2%, and you know what your costs are. There's so many better ways to do this. Yeah, the LMI system is so wrong. You're dead right, Tom. Mate, it fires me up, this one. It just really rubs me up the wrong way, I can tell you.
Yeah. Well, mate, they do, and let's hand it to the government, because they really want to keep things simple, right? And they have actually opened up super. So the first home buyers super scheme, they did in the budget. They've increased that.
Yeah.
So you can now kind of use your super, and so they just made it super simple, didn't they? Mate,
Andy, are you being facetious right now?
One of my advisors wrote a statement of advice for it recently, and I looked at it. I'm like, oh, you've got to be joking.
Mate, you've got to go to a financial planner to get it done, right? So the financial planner's not going to do it for free, is he? Like, I mean, so now it's like, what, anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000 to get the fucking advice.
Mate, nowadays, because what they did to the industry, you're talking $5,000 and above. Like, you can't get it for under that these days. It's just not economical, based on what the government did. Let me tell you
based on the risk that you as the financial planner's got to take. Like, free hit, Andy puts his farts the wrong way and someone can take him to bloody,
not even the risk, mate. They just decided to load us up with an additional fee for make us pay for the Royal Banking Commission, of which the banks don't even play a part in anymore. So now everyone gets an extra fee of $4,000 a year or something stupid like that. And it's like, mate, they've just complianced the industry. So we're in a bit of a nexus period here, whereby there's these complex ways that they're trying to do good, but you need a professional to navigate them, because they built in complexity. Why wouldn't you just say something like, you know what, you're under the age of 40. You can use all of the concessional contributions or non-concessional contributions up to 80% of your fund.
That's Just call it. Just make it simple. 70%, 80%, whatever. Boom, that's it, and you can put it towards your home.
Once off. But no, they create all of these esoteric little things. And here's the real rub, is because sometimes I think that it's to create the perception of doing good while maintaining that they're going to keep getting their taxes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's they're sorting for the benefit for them, rather than sorting for the benefit of the consumer, your average Joe. Yeah. And so in doing so, they get really clever and they go, oh, well, we can give them the advantage, but we can kind of take it away over here. And so there's this give and take, which creates nothing but friction.
Constant ass covering, constant, friction in the process. You're dead right. There's so much better ways to get the outcome, and that's really the conversation, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day, we're trying to have. I mean, really, at the end of the day, for all of us, here's a few things. Okay, well, let's give first home buyers some more money. Folks, like the LMI thing, great. I think that government should be covering the cost of LMI. That's for sure. But here's my.
I loved Albanese. Just go back up before we jump into that one, Chase. I loved Albanese. Did anybody let me know if you saw Albanese on the news over the last couple of days? I have never. If anybody watched Survivor, where they had that Labor politician from Bankstown, I think it was, right, and this dude couldn't lie straight in bed. Like he was you just ask him a direct question, he'd go, oh my God, I've never seen somebody. Jason, did you see it? Like Albanese, they've gone, so you're going to do that by raising taxes? We are going to introduce this new scheme to put more money into. Are you going to raise taxes? We're going to do tax reforms in order to he basically ended up saying it without. Literally, he ended up saying it while trying not to say it. It was the most hysterical thing I've ever seen, and so transparent. Like, at what point in time, as us as Australians, we gonna go enough? All right. As soon as a politician dodges a question, bang, he doesn't.
You're out, mate.
You're out. You're gone. It was,
But
mate. It just
should be
wasn't.
like it should. What was it? I don't know. One of those Australia's Got Talent. Everyone gets to vote, right? Nah, mate, give a shit.
Yeah,
get him off.
I would have liked him more if so. Are you going to do that by raising taxes? Sorry, hun. Spaghetti's on. I've got to go. But you're in the park. I've got to go. Wife's calling.
Got to hear my mum calling. But
probably would be mum too. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, mate. These things, and here's how I feel about the budget. Everything happens for a reason, and sometimes the reason is because you're stupid and you make bad decisions. Crikey, right now the government is like, I don't even know if they're paying attention, Andy. Construction prices off the charts. Shortage of labor. Land registration out like 18 months. No one can friggin' buy anything. And then they're like, you know what?
Age carer reform where nobody's like, you can't hire people. There's no one to hire. It doesn't matter if you pay them more. There's no one there.
Oh, mate, just like, listen, fellas, chucking more money into a place that's got more problems than you can poke a stick at is not a bloody good idea. I'm a property person. I'm like, yeah, give us some free money, but this is ludicrous. They should be putting cash into jobs, into business, into job creation. Mate,
small business every single day of the week. Small business is the largest taxpayer.
Yep.
Of Australia.
Mate,
combined, we pay the largest amount of tax by a factor. Last year was like 56%. I reckon we might actually not have the overwhelming majority this time, because a lot of us have used the instant asset write-off and really so I reckon it might be some of the car companies that might have car companies and equipment companies. But we are the single largest taxpayer in the Australian economy, and we are the most productive by an absolute country mile.
Yeah,
country mile. We employ more people. We pay more taxes. And do you know what we got? We actually got a disguised tax, Jace. Did you know? Do you know what?
Because tell me about that. I think, Alison, you're right, trying to get a straight answer from a toddler. So I'm a politician, but anyway.
So here's a disguised tax, because some of the things, and we're going to do, and it'll probably have to be reserved for your private clients and my private clients, Jace, because we're going to delve right into the technical sides of things, and we'll run it in the private groups. But they're quite often what's in the budget is what's not in the budget. All right. And what was not in the budget is a lot of the stuff that was in last year's or the previous budget or the previous budget from that. And so I'm going to position this really, really quickly, but this is a small business tax. It's a large business tax as well. Whack it in the chat if you know what it is. Just one or two words. Whack it in the chat. Love to know if you picked it up. Now, there was no announcements made. It's attached to existing legislation, and it increases the cost of employment from every employer in Australia.
Crikey, is it payroll taxes? Is it something to do with that world? Oh, super guarantees. There you go. It's true. It's true.
There we go.
Yeah.
So from July 2022, there's no announcement that's been. Oh, who was that? Somebody just pegged it straight away.
Deb Jensen, mate, all over it. Go, Deb. Go, Deb. Jeff. Yep.
Unbelievable. Yep. Absolutely spot on the money. Spot on the money. It's super.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that nobody will listen to is ultimately small businesses, right? That it has the biggest impact on us, because that's literally a 0.5% increase in our wage cost. Nobody asked permission. You get nothing more from it. It is literally straight to the bottom line of the business. 0.5% on labor costs throughout your business, every single business in Australia. Now, yeah, I think this is great and we're going in the right direction. But when you do things like this, And this is a creep. Remember, this was 9.5. So this is a 1% increase on wage costs now to small and large business in Australia without much by way of subsidy to our industries. And you look at America, the big difference between it, one of the things that made America, I'm not going to say
great again. According to Trump, great again.
It's such a contentious thing to say. I'm sure there's a few people who have seen that TikTok and YouTube video about what the girl says, why don't we make America great again? And he goes on this tirade about why America's not great. But America is an incredibly efficient and brilliant business machine. And it's created some unbelievable businesses because I think one is a psychological way that business owners behave. They celebrate success. They don't have the tall poppy syndrome. And there's a lot of grants. There is a lot of spending. There is a lot of benefits of starting up businesses over in the States, and they really celebrate it. And here's the thing: when I start looking back, apart from the COVID measures, and let's face it, the reason why they did this instant asset tax write-off and a lot of the business subsidies that they had, because if they didn't, everyone was FU or FKUCE, whatever the dyslexic version was, right? Everyone was cactus. And so it wasn't to benefit us, not by a shadow of a doubt. It was totally self-serving. It was just to keep the economy ticking. And so at any point in time, if they say that they gave small business that, you go, absolute BS. You gave yourself a lifeline, because if you allowed that to tank, you were screwed. Nobody was paying your bills. But so what we have sustained with a disguise of COVID relief, which they will penny as small business relief, right? We've just got nothing but added cost to the bottom line. Look, they have reduced the tax. They have. Okay, so they do give us a little bit. But that they are taking that back by way of other taxes on business. And I've always called super a tax of business, because it is the tax on the people.
Mate, it's what give with one hand, take with the other, balance it out. Nobody's getting ahead. And at the end of the day, like you and I know too, many people who aren't aware of how to use their super effectively aren't even benefiting from this increase either, right? Who gets to benefit from that increase? The institutions who manage your money quite badly, and then want to be rewarded for it. So, for those who are, cognizant of, no, I'm going to, keep an eye on this, great. More money in your super. If you manage that well into the future, better for your wealth. But if you don't, if you're the majority of Australians, 98% of Australians who think super money is not real money, Andy. Like, when I speak to people, people go, oh, super's not real. Fucking super's real when you're 65 years old. I can tell you, folks. And that's what those institutions love. The bigger institutions, I'm not going to name them so you and I don't get in trouble, but, they have 3-letter acronyms, a lot of them.
Allegedly, yep.
Allegedly, yeah. But, at the end of the day, for all of us, I think, in Australia, in many places in the world, but Australia particularly, New Zealand, America, whatever, small businesses are, very, very important to the economy. And, I personally think that, money should be directed towards small businesses more than the real estate world. I would prefer that. For me, it's business investment still is at the lowest since the 1990s recession.
That's incredible.
It's flying away from the country, right? So, even though we might be going, jobless rates down, if we were competing, Andy, you and I were chatting about this the other day. If things were normal, if it was a normal marketplace, we wouldn't be celebrating going, yay team. We'd be in all sorts, right? And this is an interesting thing, right? So, the budget, I didn't see anything in there for small business to create more jobs for people, Andy. I saw nothing, right? And all I saw was more problems that the government's going to win some votes now, but kick the can down the fucking road. So, unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of what they've just done.
Mate, it was very underwhelming, and for somebody who generally loves budget time, there's not a lot from it. I haven't done a lot of research into it because I watched it. Thank God it was short. Jeez.
Yeah.
Because I just can't stand his voice anymore. And ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a Liberal or Labor thing. I throw punches at both sides quite equally. This is a balanced argument, and I'll punch both of them at the moment. But it was just boring. It was absolutely boring. There was nothing in it. And I know that. Look, if you took company tax for businesses under, say, $10 million, and you said everything over a $200,000 profit is going to be taxed at the company tax rate. Everything under that, as long as the retained earnings go to new talent, staff, business development, goes into resources. They did put a few subsidies in there, like education subsidies for businesses. 120% tax deduction for certain education. Let's see the bells and whistles attached to that bullshit, because my prediction is going to be that it's going to be through, sorry, Heather, if you're listening, but it's going to be through some freaking RTO that, 90% of businesses can't access the benefit of. The training courses are not relevant to whatever. Like that's generally how these things roll out.
Well, it's happening right now for me. This is a case study, like a real case study at the moment. I've got 3 young people. I thought, okay, well, we can get them into the trainee program, traineeship. We gave them a job. It's taken us now 4 months to try and get through the rigmarole of, and now we find that it's changed. Now it's called something else. Now we've got to deal with somebody else and someone else and something else. And as a business owner, I'm like, why is it taking me? Why is it up to me to take 4 months to do this? I'm like, I want to hire some young people. I want to give them a job. I want to give them something or other, and the government,
you just do the math on that, Jace. That's 4 hours of your time plus, and times that across 100,000 businesses across Australia. So that's 400,000 hours, 400,000. And this is, let's just do 10. Right. So let's go. It's now 40,000 hours, 40,000 hours. That's 40,000 hours of somebody else over the other side of the phone who is not producing any productivity whatsoever. And if you just go, you know what? Let's have an incredible auditing system. Let's have a tick box, a self-assess. The tax system, Jason. The tax system is self-assessment.
It's a self-assessment. It's a self-assessment system.
And then you self-assess. And then there's very big penalties if you rot the system. You can go to jail. There's all sorts of responsibilities on you doing the ticker box self-assessment. So why, when it comes to all of these other things, do we not do something at least a little bit similar to the way that we do it en masse? To me, it's just mind-bogglingly stupid. It's just a gargantuan waste of money that you spent 10 hours or 40 hours because there's somebody over the other end of that phone. Yeah. And that's a wage. And there's multiple people of those. 40,000 hours worth of that. You do the math on what the salary wastage of that is. And that's only if 10,000 businesses are doing exactly the same thing. The job creation in the government is one of the... That's...
They're like, well, we've got to create jobs somewhere. We'll do it in the government sector.
We have created that many policies, ladies and gentlemen. We are now the Australia's #1 employer. The government is the #1 employer. That's hilarious.
But it's so true. It's so true. Like the inefficiency there, and this stuff, you and me, like many people listening in, Hannah Lee, obviously, and others, like we're diligent, we're diligent, passionate Australians, like, hey, I started business. I love being able to employ people. I employ 120 plus people. It's like, okay, well, come on now, like, why make it so hard? Like, why make it so hard for me to be able to help? Like, it's just
even a simple thing like remove GST for on payroll. Right. So for every, because what a lot of people don't understand, right, is that, so let's just say you've got a business, you got one employee, and that person costs you $100,000, right? And you earn $100,000 for the year, including GST, and the person is the only overhead. Are you even? Are you ahead, or are you behind? is the question I'll ask. And this is what a lot of people don't get right now. Obviously, it's obvious where this is going. You're behind because GST is offset against goods and services, right? And an employee's wage
salaries. Yeah.
So literally, we earn and we get the 10% tax. But here's a great suggestion, because I can tell you it would go straight back into people for me. If you remove that, then there's an extra 2 people in my team straight off the bat.
Yep.
And here's the other thing, Jace, because they've all got sliding tax rates, they would end up earning more by me employing 2 more people than they would by not by having the GST on it.
And the government, lot more. Yeah, and the government would get the tax. Like
Government would get the tax.
Like it's it's an interesting conversation on this, Andy, because like I've had some debates with some quite socialist, focused people in the past about the idea of negative gearing, and I'm like, well, listen, at the end of the day, the tax system, our process, it's not like a system where you take it out and it's removed from the cycle of life. If somebody invests in a property and they save a couple of dollars in their PAYG tax and they put it back it goes back into the system. It's not removed. It goes back into the system. It goes back to consumption. It goes back to, hey, I'm a bit better off now. I'm going to go to the movies this week, right? That's what happens. Like, that's what people do. I'm going to go on a holiday. I'm going to take my kids to the theme parks in the Gold Coast. When they have a bit of extra money, they do stuff with it. Everyone's a winner, right? And I think it's just complete bullshit that, this idea that, business owners or investors, they're rorting the system. What absolute fucking rubbish. It's for me, I would prefer to see GST go up 5%. You get rid of stamp duty, you get rid of all this other payroll tax bullshit, all of that other stuff. Make sure that your wages can be offset against, your mate.
GST. Yeah. Well, mate, I just did the math on it. That's the reason why I had my head down. 21%. 21% would be the net return on that, right? So they've just doubled.
Yeah.
Right. And there's ways of making sure that discount goes into salaries. There's there's ways of being able to do it that are far simpler. Far more simple, rather.
Mate, no vision, mate. Looks like you and I might have just, convinced ourselves to get into politics at some point.
Again, it happens this time of the year, doesn't it?
It does. It does. I'm not quite sure whether it's well, maybe the older we get, the more long-lasting our disposition might be.
I just think that you come into a period of time like this because most people are looking at the budget, and the first thing that I said when budget had finished was, well, I turned to my partner. I said, "Thank fuck, that's over." And then I said, well, it's a win. It's a win for people. People are going to have some more money. But it's a lose for the country. I Jeff, but you have to put that up on the screen. That's hilarious. But it's a lose for the country because
we got one vote, Andy. That's the start, isn't it?
That's one. Well, this is how it starts, isn't it? But I just get these are the people who are sitting around thinking shit up all day. That's pretty much what they get paid to do. And then they get paid to bicker. I had a slide of what's in the news for today, and jokingly I was about to say, well, thank God. He's not in the news anymore. He's got COVID. Oh, that's why he was in the news. But I was going to say, what's in the news? And this was my summary of what I've seen over the last few days. I've seen the House bickering, and they're literally just going, well, nobody cares about budgets. Nobody, and the budget is the money is the teddy bear in this analogy. Nobody cares. We just both want to pull it in the direction that we want, and we're going to scream and yell and bitch and moan until somebody gets their way. And that's pretty much what's happening. Yeah. And the opposite side of that teddy bear is what's on the right-hand side of the screen. There is a lot of money that's going under the table. It's above the table. I'm not saying that it's illegitimate what's happening, but there's bribes. This is a bribe budget. And
it's an openly bribe budget. Hey, we'll give you some money. some free cash if you guys vote for us. That's what's going on.
You know what? If one party, and look, I'm not going to say which side I'm on. I'd love to be on none, really, to be fair. But if Labor had come out with some dramatically different positions, polarizing for the benefit of the economy longer term, which possibly had some hard margins in there, but some big long-term goals, I reckon these guys are now just so short-sighted, and they're so into their social media game that they've lost the reason why these people are fundamentally there to begin with. And they're there to make Australia a better place, and not them. They're not there to win a popularity contest. They're there to make Australia a better place. And I think that the response to the budget was an epic fail, because it was just, I want to give more of the toys away. And, it's as an Australian, it's sad to see. And, last year, at least, we were chatting about some of the technicalities of the budget, and there's some genius in it, and there was some real thought. And the year before, again, we were talking about that. We both get a bit vocal about how stupid some of the things are. But this year, I just sit back and I go, wow, after a pandemic, after one of the toughest times that we've seen, yes, it's an election year, but guys, pick up your game. Like, this is just, it's disgusting. It's innocuous. The budget is underwhelming. And there's just nothing. It's the best of a bad choice of people who have, what was that slide you had before? People who have made terrible decisions and continue to make them, or something like that.
Mate, everything happens for a reason. Sometimes the reason is because you make stupid, because you're stupid and you make bad decisions. There it is.
That is the budget. Sometimes things happen for a reason, and the reason is you're stupid and you keep making bad decisions. And I just come to it. I think that to a degree it's on us, and the question goes, well, how do we change it? And that's I think that's the question that we need to be sort of asking ourselves now, is how do we change it? Because there's stupid decisions, there's stupid people making bad decisions, and it's constant.
Yeah. Well, I think that's that's certainly one of those things where I think the idea that why our votes and paying attention to politics actually matters. Aussies are quite apathetic about it, but I think, to be honest, if anything has taught many people in this country, maybe worldwide, in the last 2 to 2.5 years, is it's important to understand the system we live in, and to take the action that you believe in, whatever that is. Don't be apathetic about it, because there has to be some system.
100%. We all love the roads that we scoot on. We get a bit bitchy and moany when the roads aren't in the condition that they need to be, and we fundamentally need these systems. But unfortunately, I think if we were to summarize the winner from the last 3 budgets, if I were to declare one winner, who do you reckon? Put it in the chat. Who do you reckon is the winner? What's the one winner from the last 3 budgets?
One clear winner.
Like, there is one standout clear winner, in my opinion. I only just came up with it now, but I think it's
after wine, see what happens, folks. After a few wines, Andy gets very creative.
But I think I'm on the money here. I think I'm absolutely on the money, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
There you go. Facebook user, whoever that is. I reckon when we get our wine on the table.
Can I give you a drum roll?
The winner was politics.
I've
said it for many, many years, and I actually was hoping to a degree that COVID would be a period of time that produced enough pain and austerity in the people that we would force governments to be accountable to their decisions. And now when I look back, I kind of go, you threw money at it. You threw money at it, and you got away with it because everyone was throwing money at it. But fair income, I think the politics is the winner here, because they went through a massive global crisis. They threw money at it, and because everyone was throwing money at it, it was fair game. And the Australian people didn't feel the levels of pain that we need to feel as a whole country to create enough social discomfort to then start to hold our governments very, very accountable for the actions that they take. And this is a global problem. It's not just here in Australia. It's global right about now. And this is what I think is that the big problem that we need to address over the future years is if we go into another period of prosperity, is how do we actually fix what is going to become a more and more challenging problem, which is going to be governments not actually operating for the benefit of the people as a whole and playing a popularity game. And movies are great predictors of future in many, many ways. And The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has the Bogon democratic process. Or Vogon, I can't remember. It's been a while.
So close to Bogan. No, I don't know which way you're going.
Vogon or Bogan. And it was just the most complex system in the world that there was only a few bureaucrats that could run the universe because they were the only ones who understood the complexities of it. And, I think that when we summarize what happened over the last few years, we had the opportunity to go through a period of pain to be able to then, make some very, very good decisions as a country. And now I think that politics has just done its thing and slipped past. And I think that they'll be on a new run again. So to the next major challenge, and I think politics 1, the people 0. Let's see what happens next time we go around the merry-go-round.
See where we go. Well, that's probably a good place to put a pin in it, folks. Mate, good to hang out with you and talk shop. That time went fast today. Hour flew by. Certainly, I agree with you, mate. Like the idea that the future, our governments, our leaders need to be, way better than they've ever been, and if anything, my hope is that, more people now pay attention, and get involved because that's so important, for where we're at, in this time of in time in the world, to be honest, Yep. Well, folks, I think we're done and dusted. And
yep. Well, for everyone who gets the $250 in Australia, if you all give that to a new party that can be funded to represent the people, we might have a start.
We might call it the WWW party.
Right the way to the top.
You never know. All right, folks. Well, fantastic to hang out with you guys. Hopefully there was some value, some benefit in there tonight. But until we see you next week, it's a good night from him.
And it's a good night from me.
Good night.